I'm Christine Abela from Oxygen8 Consulting. I'm a business consultant with a strong tech background, helping small business owners move from chaos to calm and take their business to the next level. In this podcast, I share practical ideas and simple systems to make your business easier to run, more profitable, and more enjoyable to own. Some of the content is created with the help of AI tools, but the voice you're hearing right now is mine, and everything is grounded in real-world experience. If you'd like to learn more, get in touch, or download free notes and resources, head over to gobeyondbusy.com.
If you're running a small business and bringing in maybe somewhere between $1 and $10 million a year, it can be a lot.
Yeah.
Like you're constantly putting out fires.
Right.
You want to grow, but it can feel like you're just barely keeping up with the day-to-day.
Absolutely. And it can be really tough to break out of that cycle.
That's exactly what we're diving into today, how to grow your business and simplify how it runs.
Ooh, I like that. Simplify.
And we've been getting some great insights from the Go Beyond Busy podcast with Christine Abela.
Oh, I've heard of Christine Abela.
Yeah, so Christine, it rhymes with a fella, in case you're trying to remember it later.
Got it, a fella.
She's a business consultant who really gets tech.
Okay.
But what's so valuable is that she explains things in a way that anyone can understand.
Yeah, a lot of tech people can get really in the weeds.
Totally, and she doesn't do that.
That's really helpful for business owners who just want to know how to use tech to make things easier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about smart growth, but without making things more complicated.
I think that's a key point. A lot of businesses get caught up in the tech for tech's sake, and it just adds complexity.
Right. It's not about shiny objects. It's about using the right tools in the right way.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to pull out the best tips from all the stuff we've been looking at.
Okay, sounds good.
Especially the advice that fits with how Christine approaches things, practical and actionable.
Makes sense.
And ultimately, we want to give you a clearer path to make your business more efficient and scalable.
Love it.
And speaking of efficiency and scaling, Christine is big on this idea that you need well-defined processes as the foundation for growth and using tech effectively. You need a solid base before you start building.
Right. If you don't know what you're doing, how can you automate it or delegate it?
Exactly. So it's all about setting up those standard operating procedures or SOPs.
I hear SOPs thrown around a lot, but I'm not sure I fully understand what they are.
We were just looking at the Scale Smarter with SOPs ebook and some emails from a mini course called The Perfect Process.
Oh, interesting.
And they all really emphasize this idea of SOPs as this kind of invisible force behind a really successful business.
Invisible force. That's an interesting way to put it.
Right. It's like they're working behind the scenes, making sure everything runs smoothly.
So instead of relying on individual talent or knowledge, the business can function through these systems.
Exactly. And that's where the real magic happens, when you can start to step back and let the systems do the work.
Got it. So for a business owner who's listening to this and they're maybe feeling overwhelmed, what's the real benefit of putting in the effort to define these SOPs?
Well, think of it like having a super detailed guide for every important task in your business.
Okay, a roadmap.
Exactly. And because everyone's following the same steps, you get that consistency.
So your product or service is always delivered the same way, no matter who's doing it.
Exactly. And that builds trust with your customers.
Right, because they know what to expect every time.
And on top of that, you see way fewer errors.
Okay, so less mistakes, less wasted time and effort.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you have fewer errors, you can be more efficient and productive.
Okay, so it's not just about consistency. It's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
That's something I think a lot of business owners struggle with.
And that becomes even more important when you're dealing with all the challenges that come with growing your business.
So it's not just about creating a manual that sits on a shelf gathering dust.
Definitely not. It's about actually using these SOPs as tools.
Tools to, what, free up time? Or
free up your mental energy.
Okay, that's huge.
Because when your team knows exactly how to handle those routine tasks, you're not getting pulled into making decisions about them all the time.
That's a big one. I feel like I spend so much time on little things that could be easily handled by someone else if there was a clear process.
Exactly. And the introduction to that Scale Smarter ebook really emphasizes that point. It says that when you have those fundamentals taken care of, you can actually start to focus on innovation.
That's interesting. So the SOPs are almost like freeing up mental space to think creatively.
Exactly. It's like clearing out all that mental clutter.
Makes sense.
So you can focus on the big picture stuff that will really move the needle for your business.
I can see how that would be so valuable, especially when you're feeling bogged down by those repetitive tasks.
Totally. And email number 1 from the perfect process actually calls SOPs a ticket to freedom.
Oh, wow. That's a powerful image.
It's like you're shifting from constantly being in the weeds to having your business run more like a well-oiled machine.
Okay, I'm sold on the idea of SOPs, but where do you even begin?
Yeah, I mean, it can feel overwhelming.
Like trying to boil the ocean?
Exactly. And that's something that the Create Your First SOP guide addresses head on.
Okay.
It really stresses the importance of finding a practical starting point.
So don't try and tackle everything at once.
Right. The first thing is to figure out which process you want to document first.
Okay, so how do you choose?
Well, the guide gives you some helpful criteria.
Like what?
Think about the impact on your core business functions.
Okay, so what are the things that really affect the quality of your product or service?
Exactly. Then think about how often you do certain tasks.
So frequency.
Yep. And then error rates.
Which processes have the most mistakes?
Right. And then training requirements.
What takes the longest to teach new team members?
And then finally, any compliance needs you have.
Oh, right. Like if there are regulations you have to follow.
Exactly.
Okay, so focusing on something that happens a lot or has a big impact seems like a good way to see some early wins.
Yeah, and build that momentum.
Absolutely.
The guide even includes a worksheet where you can actually score different processes based on those criteria.
Oh, cool. So you can actually get a number to help you prioritize.
And then the process with the highest score becomes your starting point.
Makes sense. A very practical way to get over that feeling of being overwhelmed.
So once you've chosen that first process, what's next?
Just dive in and start writing.
Not quite yet.
Okay, what else?
Email number 2 from that Perfect Process course introduces a 3-step framework.
I love frameworks. Break it down for me.
Okay, so the first step is called choose and break down.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
It's all about taking that task you've chosen and breaking it down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay, bite-sized chunks.
Exactly.
So you're not trying to write the whole SOP in one go.
Right, you just list out each step in order.
Makes sense. What's step 2?
It's called document and enhance.
Okay, so now you're actually writing out the instructions.
Right, and both the guide and the email really stress the importance of clear and simple language.
Keep it straightforward.
Use active voice short sentences and make sure each step describes just one action.
So like click the button, not click the button and then wait for the page to load.
Exactly. And they also suggest adding visual aids where they make sense.
Oh, like screenshots or diagrams?
Or even short videos if you need to show a more complex action.
I learned so much better with visuals.
Me too. And then they recommend including troubleshooting tips and any necessary tools or resources.
Okay, so it's not just about the happy path. You're also preparing for what could go wrong.
Exactly. And then the final step is format for success.
Okay, presentation.
Yeah, it's all about making the SOP easy to use.
Makes sense.
So using a consistent template.
Okay, so they all look the same.
Right. And email number 2 actually provides a basic template.
Oh, cool. That's handy.
Yeah, it includes things like the title, the purpose, the last updated date, the tools you need, and then, of course, the step-by-step instructions with those quality checkpoints we talked about.
Those are important to make sure things are done right.
And then version control is also key.
So everyone knows they're looking at the most up-to-date version.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
And then both the guide and the email stress the importance of a clear title and a purpose statement.
So everyone knows what the SOP is about and what it's supposed to achieve.
Exactly. And email number 2 suggests starting with just one repetitive task.
One that's eating up your time.
Right, that's your low-hanging fruit.
The one that will give you the biggest bang for your buck.
Exactly. So you've got your first SOP written reviewed. Seems pretty comprehensive.
Done right.
Not so fast.
Oh, there's more.
The Scale Smarter ebook and email number 3 from the Perfect Process both say that the first draft is just the beginning.
Okay, so what comes next?
Testing and refining.
Making sure it actually works in the real world.
Exactly.
So how do you go about testing an SOP?
Well, email number 3 lays out a really cool 4-step framework.
Okay, I love frameworks. Let's hear it.
First is the fresh eyes test.
Interesting.
You get someone who's never done this task before to try out your SOP.
Oh, that's smart.
You just observe them silently and note any places where they get stuck or make mistakes or ask for clarification.
So you're really looking for those points of friction.
And then afterwards you ask them what was unclear.
Makes sense. Someone who doesn't already know the process is going to be the best at finding those gaps.
Exactly. The second step is the time test. So you measure how long it takes to complete the process using the SOP.
And compare that to how long it used to take.
Exactly. You're looking for bottlenecks or steps that could be streamlined.
Makes sense so that you can make it even more efficient.
Right. Step 3 is the quality check.
Quality control.
Yep. You define what success looks like for that process.
The desired outcome.
And then you test if following the SOP consistently leads to that outcome.
Okay, and if it doesn't, you can figure out why and adjust the SOP.
Exactly. You document any errors and figure out how to prevent them.
Makes sense? And the final step.
The team review.
Okay.
So you get feedback from the people who are actually going to be using the SOP regularly.
Their insights are going to be invaluable.
Because they're the ones who will be doing the work day in and day out.
Right. They'll know what works and what doesn't.
And email number 3 also warns about some common testing mistakes to avoid.
Like what?
Like only testing with experts who already know the process.
Right. You need that fresh perspective.
And then assuming certain steps are obvious and don't need to be spelled out.
Yeah, you can't take anything for granted.
And then forgetting to document how to handle those unusual situations.
Edge cases.
Right, or not including enough troubleshooting guidance.
Okay, so it's really about being thorough and thinking about all the possibilities.
Exactly. And the key takeaway here is that it's an ongoing process.
It's not just one and done.
Right, you're constantly testing, refining, and improving based on the feedback you get.
So the SOP is a living document.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've got your SOP tested and refined. Now, how do you get your team to actually use it?
That's the next challenge. And it's something that both Scale Smarter with SOPs and email number 4 from The Perfect Process focus on.
Right.
They both talk about the importance of having a really solid training framework.
Makes sense. You can't just hand people a document and expect them to figure it out.
Right. You need to make sure they understand it, buy into it, and know how to use it.
So what does an effective SOP training framework look like?
Email number 4 lays out a 4-step framework.
Get me with it.
The first step is the involvement strategy.
Okay.
And this is all about getting your team involved in the SOP creation process right from the start.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just something that's imposed on them.
Exactly. You can ask for their input on how things are currently done, let them participate in the testing phase, and really acknowledge their contributions.
So they feel like they're part of the process.
Exactly. And when people feel like they've had a hand in creating something, they're more likely to embrace it.
Makes sense.
Step 2 is the training approach.
Okay, so how do you actually train people on the SOPs?
Well, they suggest starting with training in small groups.
Okay, less intimidating.
And then using a variety of learning methods to cater to different learning styles.
Oh, right. Some people learn best by seeing some, by doing some, by reading.
Exactly. So you might use visual aids, hands-on practice written materials, mix it up.
Makes sense.
And they also recommend setting up a buddy system.
So more experienced team members can help those who are new to the SOPs.
Exactly. It's all about providing that support.
What's step 3?
The implementation plan.
Okay.
So this is about rolling out the new SOPs gradually.
So you're not throwing everything at people at once.
Right. You set clear milestones for adoption, give people enough time to adjust and have regular check-ins to answer questions and address any concerns.
That's important to make sure the transition is smooth.
Exactly. And then the final step is the support system.
Okay.
This involves having SOP champions within the team.
People who can be the go-to resource.
Exactly. And creating clear channels for feedback on the SOPs themselves.
So people can suggest improvements.
And then scheduling regular review sessions to reinforce the procedures.
Keep it top of mind.
And even celebrating early successes to build momentum.
Oh, that's a good one. Positive reinforcement.
Right. And email number 4 also introduces this acronym called the CARE method.
Okay. What does CARE stand for?
Clear communication, active participation, regular reinforcement, and evaluation and adjustment.
Okay, so it's a framework for making sure the SOPs actually stick.
Exactly. And that emphasis on clear communication is really important.
You mean explaining why the SOPs are important?
Yeah, and how they benefit both the individual and the overall business goals.
Makes sense when people understand why they're more likely to buy in.
And the SOT Training Implementation Framework Guide really emphasizes this idea of foundation building.
Okay.
It's all about clearly explaining the rationale behind the SOPs and the expected positive outcomes.
So you're setting the stage and getting everyone on board.
Exactly. Now, we talked earlier about Christine Abela being tech savvy.
Right. She's all about using tech to make things easier.
So how do these well-defined SOPs then connect to that idea of leveraging technology and scaling your business?
That's where things get really exciting, and it's something that both Scale Smarter with SOPs and email number 5 from the Perfect Process highlight.
Okay.
They explain that having those SOPs in place is actually essential for smart automation and scalable growth.
So you can't just jump into automation without having those processes defined first.
Right. It's not just about the tools.
Yeah.
It's about having a solid foundation to build on.
And email number 5 talks about identifying automation-ready SOPs.
What does that mean?
It means processes that involve tasks that are repetitive, have clear triggers.
So you know when to start the process.
Exactly. And require minimal human decision-making.
So a computer can handle it.
Right. Or involve data entry or follow standard communication workflows.
Okay, so once you have those processes documented and people are following them consistently, you can start looking at automation tools.
Exactly.
So what kind of tools are we talking about?
Well, email number 5 mentions some basic but powerful ones like Zapier.
Oh yeah, Zapier's great for connecting different apps.
Exactly. And then Google Forms and Sheets.
For collecting and managing data.
And then email autoresponders.
For consistent communication.
And then task management tools that have automation features built in.
Okay, so there are a lot of options, even for businesses that aren't super techy.
Right. And then it also touches on some more advanced options like custom API integrations.
APIs, those are the things that let different software systems talk to each other.
Yep. And then workflow automation platforms and even robotic process automation, or RPA.
RPA, that's where you use software robots to automate tasks.
Exactly. But the key here is to keep it simple.
Don't get bogged down in the technical details.
Right. Focus on the benefits and start small.
Baby steps.
Test things out thoroughly and build in those safety nets with human checkpoints.
So you're not completely handing over control to the robots.
Exactly. And Scale Smarter with SOPs also talks about how well-defined SOPs help you create scalable workflows.
Okay, so you can expand your business without things falling apart.
Exactly, because everyone's following the same procedures. You can maintain that consistency even as you grow.
Whether you're adding new locations, new team members, new products or services.
It's all about having those systems in place that can handle the increased volume.
Makes sense.
Now, one last thing to keep in mind, developing SOPs isn't a one-time thing.
All right, you can't just set it and forget it.
Businesses are constantly changing, so your SOPs need to adapt.
How do you make sure they stay relevant and effective?
Both Scale Smarter with SOPs and email number 6 from the Perfect Process talk about the importance of having a systematic review framework.
Okay, break that down for me.
So it involves regular quick scans to catch any immediate issues.
Okay.
And then more thorough quarterly reviews to make sure the SOPs are still aligned with how you're doing things.
Makes sense.
And then annual strategic assessments to check if the SOPs are still supporting your overall business goals.
So you're taking a step back and looking at the big picture.
And then emergency reviews if there's a major issue or change.
So you can adapt quickly.
And Scale Smarter with SOPs also emphasizes the importance of data-driven optimization.
Using data to make decisions.
Exactly. You track key performance indicators or KPIs like time to completion error rates, customer satisfaction.
And then use that data to figure out where you can improve your processes.
It's all about continuous improvement.
And fostering a culture of continuous improvement within your team.
Encouraging people to give feedback and suggest ways to make things better.
And building flexibility into your SOPs so they can adapt to change.
And planning for those technological advancements.
So your operations are as future-proof as possible.
And for those small business owners who are listening, turning over $1 to $10 million.
Right.
Working with a business consultant who really understands tech like Christine Abela.
She would be a great resource.
It can be super helpful in figuring all of this out.
Yeah, they can guide you through the whole process, from creating those SOPs to finding the right tech tools.
So to sum it all up,
the takeaways.
Implementing those well-defined SOPs.
The ones inspired by folks like Christine Abela.
Provides that foundation for small businesses that want to grow sustainably and simplify how they run things.
Absolutely.
And by focusing on these systematic approaches, from picking the right processes to document, to training your team, to using data to optimize.
You can move from feeling overwhelmed to running a more efficient, more profitable, and ultimately more sustainable business.
And if you want to dive deeper into all of this,
more resources,
head to gobeyondbusy.com.
You can find show notes, free downloads,
and even get in touch with Christine directly for personalized advice.
That's a great resource.
Now, one last thought for you, our listener.
Food for thought.
Think about that one process in your business that takes up the most time or causes the most errors.
The one that keeps you up at night.
Imagine having a clear, well-documented and maybe even fully automated system handling it perfectly every time.
What a relief that would be.
So take that first step today towards process improvement.
You might be surprised by the results.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Go Beyond Busy. If something in today's episode struck a chord, or you'd like support to get your business to the next level, head over to gobeyondbusy.com. You'll find more resources there and an easy way to get in touch. I'm your host, Christine Abela from Oxygen8 Consulting, helping you to fall in love with your business all over again. Thanks for joining me.